Captain's Log Supplemental.
Hey Jeremy, you know those race cars you're busy building?
Yeah, I do. I
You,
got one
you,
that I'm looking at every day.
you know what I don't see you working on?
You don't see me working on the amazing Sentinel system yet.
That's true. It would take all of 10 minutes for you to have one.
And it's very quick and easy to install.
It is. It is. And we could watch you when we are not at the race with you and see how you're doing. And then we can call you up when you get out of the car and tell you everything you did wrong.
And I love that because so many years I've been driving and not been able to see what I'm doing.
I know.
And now we can.
I know. You know what I'd like to do with the video? My most favorite thing is I take the video and I load it on YouTube and then I send it to my coach and say, look at 26 minutes and 17 seconds. Look at this one lap and tell me what I can do better. And every single time, you know what they say?
Everything.
Exactly. Precisely. So with the Sentinel system, you get instantaneous feedback plus useful feedback that unfortunately is accurate for my driving.
I think it's accurate for all of our driving.
Pretty much. Yeah, that's probably true. Yep. But you need to get one in your car, sir.
Yes, I do. And with the discount code that you're going to tell everybody, they can save 10% on this awesome system.
Yep. Trouble free. I haven't had an issue getting video every time we've gone out with the Sentinel. It's always worked. Can't say the same for some of the other systems we've tried. So I don't know. It's on the podcast notes down there. Don't do it while you're driving, though. We like to have our listeners live. It's good.
From the great halls of their house, there are assembled three who hope to one day be the world's greatest driving heroes. Created from the cosmic legends of the universe comes our team captain, the Vision, Bill Fisher, and their soon-to-be Wonder Woman, Vicki Fisher, and our Captain Marvel and head flight trainee, Jennifer Skripchuk. Their mission: to fight injustice, share what is right and wrong, to get you out of your house and come out racing with them and serve all mankind. They are the Garage Heroes in Training Team.
Welcome to the Garage Heroes in Training podcast. I'm going to be one of the hosts for this episode. My name is Bill. Who else is hosting?
I'm Vicki.
Miss Vicki.
Yeah.
One of our best guests, one of our early guests. Last seen by our physical eyes on the Lemons recap videos, which we love, and may get poked a little bit of fun at for it, but that's okay. Welcome back to the podcast, Nick Pon.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
All around good guy.
All around.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate
Grand
that.
Poobah.
That's right. So Nick, let's start it off with the quick, easy question. What do we have to do to get you in a race car? What do we have to
man.
do?
Well, to be honest, it's not like I haven't driven before. In fact, big thanks to local car legend Conrad Stevenson around here in the Bay Area. He's an Alpha restorer. He built a Lemons car that he'll let me drive sometimes, and that's the one that I get into. As far I've gotten invitations, which I appreciate, from other teams, and my biggest concern is breaking somebody else's car or having something go wrong.
That just
so I tend to politely decline when that
I
comes.
know.
Yeah.
Well, we tried it last time. We tried it again. We thought maybe
Lemons cars.
Yeah.
They all break. It doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, I've been on, and I'm sure you guys would graciously
absolutely
be fine with it if I came back with your car in a million pieces. That being said, I've witnessed on the other side of it where the Arrive and Drive just wrecked our car and how sad the teams are, and I just don't want to be that guy.
Well, if it makes you feel better, just realize that you wouldn't be the first person on our team to bring back a wrecked and broken car.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Some would say it's a specialty.
Let's revisit just a little bit. Nick, how long you been doing this?
I've been doing it since the beginning. So actually, Jay and I, Jay was involved with car magazines. I mean, that's how old this was. It was when a magazine was still a thing.
That's paper, right?
Yeah, printed on paper, delivered in the mail, the whole business.
Wow.
Oh.
And he had been involved in that industry. His father was involved in that. So he was, I mean, I think since he was a teenager, was involved with car magazines. It was always something I wanted to do. I always had an interest in cars, and I knew Jay from doing vintage rallies, old car stuff here in California. And when I graduated college, was lucky enough to get hired by Jay as sort of an assistant to his magazine projects at the time, which were Corvette Magazine, famously, which we have mentioned in the videos, but also Miata Magazine, or was it the Miata Club Magazine, maybe? It was affiliated loosely or maybe officially with the Miata Club, and then the lesser known unsung hero of our magazine business, the PT Cruiser Quarterly magazine, was the third one.
It's short-lived.
Yeah, and so yeah, I worked alongside Jay producing magazines for better part of it was 4 years until we did the first Lemons race, which was 2006. And the first Lemons race was a one-off thing. We never thought of it as being an ongoing concern. And then partially thanks to our connections to the magazine industry, we invited Road and Track, we invited Car and Driver to come do that very first Lemons race. We got a lot of coverage about it. And then we started getting questions like, hey, when are you guys doing the next Lemons race? And, at that time, we didn't know we were doing another Lemons race. So it kind of just organically went from there. And from 2006 through about 2009, we were doing both. By that time, sadly, the PT Cruiser magazine was no more, but the Corvette thing was still around, and we were doing both. And then around 2009, that's when we decided to do a full national Lemon schedule. And we really had to make the decision whether or not to continue magazines or not. And we decided not to, and here we are.
So what can we reconstruct the conversation between you and Jay when somebody said, when's the next one gonna be?
Oh man. Well, God, I mean, it's almost 20 years ago,
Yep.
believe it or not, that happened. So I can't say I remember specifically, but it just honestly, all joking aside, it really felt organic. Like we did that first one, and it didn't feel like the kind of thing that, oh, well, we've done that, we're never doing that again. It really felt like, hey, people are into this. We're gonna keep doing it, I guess. And then,
Really? Okay.
and the initial thought was, I mean, we didn't have any plans, but
Yeah.
I just think the general vibe. And then once the idea of doing another one popped up, it was very natural. It wasn't like, oh God, I guess we're doing another one. It was just kind of like, well, we did one last year, let's try two this year. And it just kind of went from there.
It's just sometimes it's hard to tell when you're in it exactly what's going on around you, like you're part of the deal and not external to it. Like external, you see, oh, that's a great idea, everybody had a great time, blah blah blah, but sometimes you're so involved with it, you just kind of miss it.
Well, and to be honest, I mean, we created this because both of us, in similar ways, this was something that we could see ourselves wanting to do, just a more accessible, less serious way of going racing. And so once we found that other people were into it, the idea of doing more of them wasn't ridiculous. Like, I think it would have been different if we had we're going to concept this thing out. We're going to analyze what we think people are into, and then we're going to do it. And it was always pretty organic as far as, we created it for dum-dums like ourselves. And then it turned out there were more dum-dums like ourselves than we initially realized.
So no
It's
focus
like a whole
groups.
knucklehead idea.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
a full knucklehead.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, you were involved with cars, so you knew that all racers were dumb. So I mean, it's
That's right. That's right. That's a
And
slogan.
they all have ADD.
Yeah, right. No, there's all yeah, there's definitely a little bit of ADD, a little OCD everywhere in the lemons world, and we embrace it. You know, we are them, so we get it.
So do you I think the initial foray into lemons racing had a much different maturity in terms of safety.
Yeah,
And I think to a certain extent you're still kind of paying for it because when people complain about lemons, they often point back to things that haven't been that way for a decade.
sure. Yeah, well, I mean, I think you're totally right. And you know, we in a lot of ways got off on the wrong foot with safety because we were completely just naive about, you know, how do you create a safe environment? And some of the early venues we went to, we just kind of assumed that they would know.
Right,
Like, you know, we're going to this track. They are a track. They will know how to do this. And, you know, to varying degrees, some of them gave us, you know, assurances on paper that they did know how to do that.
right,
And we slowly realized that a lot of them didn't know how to do that and that if we wanted it to be really safe, which has always been one of our priorities, we really had to get directly involved and figure out how to do it ourselves and create a rule set that and a mentality. I would almost say that the mentality, that the vibe of the kind of person we want to encourage to do lemons is a bigger factor than the actual hardware of the safety. You know,
sure.
trying to avoid people that are just, you know, aggro out there, you know, trying to win the race and so on and so forth. But yeah, no, it was it was a learning process. I wouldn't say it's a slow learning process because pretty quickly we realized that like, man, these tracks don't know what they're doing. And if we want people to be safe, we have to put in a rule that says X.
Right.
So, and that has, I think, you know, the curve was very steep at the beginning, and I think it's flattened out over the last few years, and you know, we feel it's a pretty good place.
Yeah. I think one thing we see because we race with, you know, uh many of the different organizations in racing and non-racing HPD, whatever. Um, Lemon's tech inspection, the serious part, not the BS inspection,
Right.
is usually the harshest critic of it and find things that others either didn't see or didn't notice or didn't look at.
Yeah. Yeah, and you know, I like, you know, I obviously the last thing we want to do is to turn somebody away because their car doesn't pass safety, but we also understand like those rules are there for a reason. That's why we try as much as we can on the website to tell people like, hey, if you're not sure, just let us know and like, you know, we'll try to sort it out so that there are no surprises once you get to the track.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and I think some people are intimidated by that. I think that they think like, oh, well, everybody knows how to do this but us, and we'll just try to do our best. We don't, you know, we want to encourage people, especially if you're a newcomer, to figure it out.
Yeah, I think the thing that makes it less intimidating, hopefully, but it doesn't happen until you're already there, is if a car comes in or a team comes in and they're not ready, I can't count how many teams and people will jump in to help them. I mean, fully
Yeah,
recage a car, make
yeah.
because they want you out there.
Yeah. No, and that's, I mean, we owe so much credit in many ways to the other competitors when it
Hmm.
comes to helping other teams, whether it's something really concrete like that, like, you know, building a roll cage, or just like, you know, making them feel welcome.
Yeah,
Because, you know, I think that is definitely a thing that was not widely present in other forms of racing
yeah,
before we showed up. So,
yeah. I mean, it could be as simple as, your wiring to your emergency cutoff switch is not right,
right.
and I know it's hard to imagine, but when you buy one of those switches, the little description that they have and the artistic liberties that their depiction shows doesn't
Yeah.
always translate to what I got these wires here and I got this switch here, and it's like they don't seem to be the same.
Right. Right. Well, yeah, and God, I have no idea how to wire one of those things. So I'm always telling people if I get emailed for something like that, I always like, go to the forum. They probably know there, and they
They
do.
they do. There's a bunch of them that do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a part of the fun is back when we started, we didn't know what we were doing, and originally we wrote a letter. Well, I wrote a letter to Three Pedal Mafia Everyone Racers podcast, and it had 26 bullets with sub bullets, and they wrote me back saying, hey, this if you're okay with it, we'd like to have you on there because A, we don't want to answer all these questions by writing, and B, it might be helpful to other teams, and
Yeah.
that got it started. And
Sure.
one thing that we've been thinking about, and I think you and I have talked about it before, is um perhaps semi-formalizing the ambassador relationship with the first time teams.
Yeah, well, we did have it semi-formalized for a while, and it just kind of ran its course. We had there was an online thing you could sign up for if you were a newcomer and you wanted a mentor, a Lemons mentor to help you. And then we had mentors that would voluntarily hook up with these teams, and it did have some success. Um, it just wasn't super widespread, so we just sort of let it go
Mhm.
away on its own. But that being said, it's certainly an idea that could come back at some point.
Yeah, I think the concept is pretty simple. The logistics of it are, when you start thinking about, well, how do we do this? It gets a little harder.
Yeah, right. Well, and the biggest challenge for us is, running the races is
Hmm.
still kind of requires a lot of bandwidth. And so anything that you add on, we have to remind ourselves, like, don't forget that you have to run the races for starters. And so that sometimes is a barrier to doing new things like that.
I mean, from our perspective, obviously we would volunteer because we do it once or twice, well, at least twice a week for 7 years.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
but I would look at it as something that you guys just have the forum to initiate the conversation
The initial
and
contact.
then
Yeah.
get out.
Yeah, no, 100%. And to even go beyond that, like one thing that we really want to work on is some kind of way to connect teams that are looking for drivers that are looking for teams. We have some resources like that on the forum. There's a
You do.
Facebook group for
Yep.
that. But that we feel like, it's all part of the same kind of thing. It's
Yep.
like, we don't want other forms of racing are like, there's a big old trailer over there and they're doing their thing. And if you're a new person and you want to know how they do it, that's like this huge barrier to approaching those people. And we want to make that easier on the lemon side of things. But it is, there are a lot of moving pieces. So we
It
haven't been able to nail it down just
it,
yet.
it would shrink the competitive advantage that I have in my race program.
Well, that is true. Occasionally I get emails that are I'm running, this type of car, and I saw that there's the same type of car running across the country. Can you put me in touch with that team? Which we're always happy to do. But my email that I always send to the team, the other team is like, okay, there's a team out here on the West Coast that's looking for your speed secrets. If you want to reach out, here's their thing. And that's always the way I preface it.
Our response is always, if they want speed secrets, they need to get different drivers than we have. So that
Well, and all kidding aside, that is, and I think Lemons people probably realize that more than a lot of car people. But man, the driver mod, as they say on the internet, is by far the biggest performance upgrade you could ever do.
100%.
Driver mod.
Yeah, exactly.
We've firsthand noticed that several cars can have a difference of 10, 15 seconds a lap, and it's the
Yeah,
same car.
yeah.
So there's
Well,
that.
and if you think about it, like, okay, if you were to take the same car and the same driver, what would you need to do to the car to get 10 seconds a lap? I mean, it's like you would have to double the power, It's a
Easily.
really
Right.
like in terms of a hardware upgrade, it's really significant. But then or you could just get a little bit better at it. You might not get to 10 seconds, but even if you got to 5 seconds, that would be a significant improvement.
Yeah, it's kind of the same argument that we often make jokes of. I can go spend tens of thousands of dollars on carbon fiber, or I can skip lunch. You know,
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
100% true.
that's not what's holding us back, guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I think you're aware of it, but we traditionally have one race a season where we have our all ladies team, which
Yes.
we
Yeah,
we we would
absolutely.
we would like to see that um have more competition in that aspect of things.
Yeah, obviously we think that's fantastic. And we don't pay too much attention to other series, but I'd like to think that Lemons in terms of the participation, does a better job with that than other
Seems
series
to.
do.
Seems to.
And we think it's fantastic. It got to the point there was actually some questioning internally in the Lemons leadership side whether or not we wanted to. It reached a point where there were so many female drivers that there was at least one person that raised the point. It's like, well, do we even need to draw the distinction anymore? Or are we at the point where we can just say, these are drivers, these are Lemons drivers, these are race drivers, and making the distinction is in a way
Yeah.
diminishing that. And I totally see that point. I get that. And if we ever were to really get to that point,
All
I
the
think
better.
that would be great. Personally, I think that you can have it both ways. You can have your cake and eat it too. You can celebrate something like an all ladies team, while at the same time respecting the fact, they're not, an all ladies team is no different than an all whatever team. That, we all Lemons drivers we respect equally. But at the same time, we do appreciate a team that is made up of all ladies, for example.
Yep.
So I like to think that we can kind of walk that line and have it both ways.
Yeah. I mean, we all know that if it's a ladies team and Vicky's on it, they're a lot better off mechanically than a men's team with me on it. So yeah.
That's right. Yeah.
So, does Lemons have any more ideas of what they might travel down? Possibly new tracks, possibly new ideas, anything to shake. I mean, when you guys did the Alaska trip, and I know that that was wonderful and probably not profitable whatsoever, but it was
Yeah.
like these once in a lifetime tracks. Like, what was the one that they had up north?
Although the last one that I can think of that really tempted me was the Thunder Hill clockwise, counterclockwise, and short
Yeah.
and long. And I'm sitting
Right.
there going,
Right.
"Oh, I need to be there." And I just
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, yeah. I mean, we're always, there's a little bit of a conflict. We found that consistency breeds success in terms
Hmm.
of this event is always at roughly this time of year at this place. I think that's just, I would assume, is a way for people to plan. It's
yes,
like a logistic thing. Like people, like they get in the rhythm of there being a barber in February or whatever it is.
That is true, especially when you have
Yeah.
families.
Right, right, exactly. That being said, we're always looking for new places. Typically, historically, for the last, I don't know, I would say 10 years, like the first few years, we were kind of all over the place trying new things in terms of venues. And then the last few years, there's been sort of the bread and butter, but there always seems to be, between one and I would say three new venues each year, which
Hmm.
percentage wise is a reasonable amount.
hmm
I mean, this year, God, I've lost track. Pacific Raceways is brand new. And Hallett, I think, is not new this year, but maybe it was new last year.
Right.
So, we kind of we go back and forth to places. There's some stuff in the works that could be new for 2025, which we're hoping to announce that schedule next month sometime,
Oh,
October.
that'd be great.
So,
My inner
yeah,
planner would be very happy
yeah,
with you, sir.
yeah. Well, I'm the first line of contact, and this is the time of year where people ask me when's the 25 schedule coming out, and
Right.
unfortunately we're at the whim of the tracks, and they are generally later than we would like to announce, but it shows you that teams are trying to plan their years, and so
Yeah.
we get it.
The addition of Road America has gone pretty well, I would say.
Yeah, Road America, we went there in 2012, something like that. And it was a weird time of year. It was really getting late in the fall where it was getting to be kind of cold in northern Wisconsin there.
And
Uh, but yeah, since it's come back, the excitement level for it has been pretty high. Booking dates there is a challenge,
yep.
but yeah.
Speaking of challenges and tracks, there's this one in the middle of the country, somewhere in Ohio.
Oh, the middle of Ohio.
Yeah, somewhere near there.
Yeah. God, I wish I had an answer for that. I know we've looked at Mid-Ohio before,
That's a
and
challenging track for lemons, I
yeah,
would
and
say.
and there's a million different factors. I mean, the number one and the simplest factor is, do they have a date that works
Right.
with the rest of our schedule?
Hmm.
And that is a difficult hurdle to cross, especially a place like Ohio. It's like, well, we've got December. It's like, yeah, we're not going there in December.
Yeah, right.
And then all of a sudden, well, it's either fall or spring because the summer's too hot also. And then, how does it factor in relative to Pit Race or Joliet or Ginger Man? So it's
Right.
it's this big puzzle that we have to figure out. I feel like there was something about Mid-Ohio just specific to that year that we were looking at it that made it not feasible. But I wouldn't say we've ruled it out.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it was we ruled it out or they ruled us out. There's always that option too.
Well, yeah, there is that factor too.
I believe Monticello falls in the latter category there.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Monticello might have been a mutual parting of ways. It's interesting. Like, there are certainly still a few tracks that don't want to book a Lemons date. That was way more common when we got started, and I
Sure.
think now our reputation of just paying the bill on time gives us a certain amount of cachet among some of the other organizers. So beyond anything, more philosophical with what we do, I think it's like, hey, those guys wrote a check and it actually cleared and it went into our bank. So I think that's helped us. But yeah, there's always going to be places that feel like it doesn't fit with their scene.
Well, occasionally we do this podcast and we actually get to do something for ourselves once in a while. So this part of our podcast is being brought to us by the Garage Heroes in Training, who are begging for I believe it's VIR.
Ah, yes.
We would greatly appreciate that.
Yeah, VIR is certainly on our radar. And we hope it happens at some point or something in that area. Yeah.
That would be ever so lovely.
Yeah.
So it's one of our bucket list tracks. It's actually pretty close to our house, and we still haven't gotten there.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Having a nearby track is a big thing for sure.
yeah, it's always good. So I think all the endurance racing series are kind of battling. Modern cars have grown appreciably from, let's say, a 70s car in terms of horsepower, performance, turning.
Yeah.
And even the newer cars, they're I think the technical word is they're a bitch to work on for a racing environment. So how do you think Lemons is doing on that battle? And do you have any things that you might see coming that could affect that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's probably a better question for one of the judges who, they have to
Sure.
figure out. Like, I mean, even like excluding something really super obviously old, like now we're dealing with, well, how do you compare an E36 BMW to an E90 BMW? I mean,
Yep.
they're significantly, they're almost 20 years apart in technology. And in our minds, oh, it's two modern BMWs. So, we have to stay abreast of that. To your point about being a bitch to work on, so far, the modern cars that show up, um, there hasn't been this like, oh, well, as soon as somebody showed up in an E90, they won the race by 40 laps.
Right.
That has not happened
Oh, I don't
for
expect it
modern
to happen. I'm
BMW.
just
Yeah, I
I'm
know.
just wondering if we're going to run out of cars we can actually work on.
Yeah, right, right, right. That being said, I mean, I haven't tried to work on one of these new ones, but I do think there is, there's a delayed reaction. Like when those cars were brand new, sort of the grassroots people had no idea how to work on them.
Hmm.
But now that out of necessity, people have gotten them as hand-me-downs or wherever else, or they show up in the pick and pull, or whatever happens. And I think that just out of necessity, people are figuring stuff out. Like I watch a fair amount of automotive YouTube, and it's interesting to me coming from a real old car perspective, like, a 60s car perspective, that like, oh yeah, this guy, he's got the scan tool for the whatever it is, and
Hmm.
he's figured out that there's a low voltage whatever on that particular circuit. And it goes to the radio for some reason, and that makes the car run bad,
Yeah.
through the CAN bus or whatever it is. And I think from, the knee-jerk reaction of a true old car person is, oh, you'll never figure that out. But the reality is, if you put your mind to it, some people have figured that out. And I think
Right.
that will make its way into lemons if it hasn't already.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you said, a modern BMW is an E36, and E36 is really modern
I
anymore.
know. Well, my first car, I have a 2002,
Yes, we know.
which was 20 years old when I got it, and my Mazda 3, which is my modern car, is going to be 20 years old next year. It's
Hmm.
going to be 20 years old in 3 months.
Hmm.
So, and there is a marked difference between how old the BMW was, just sort of in a general sense, compared to how old the Mazda is now.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to see the evolution. I mean, the big uncharted territory that we're starting to see a little bit of is the EV side of things.
Hmm.
And that's really uncharted. And it's exciting to see what people are doing. Personally, it's not as interesting to me, but I'm really glad that people are trying to figure it out, and it's cool to see it in the torture test of a lemons race to see what really happens when you try to race a car like that.
It's a pretty good environment to push the car. Well, speaking of that, has any you're not going to be allowed to say the answer. You can just say yes or no. Has any OEM ever said, "Hey, we want to test our car. Can we come out and play with you guys just to see what it'll take?" Or
Well, if it's a yes or no question, it's a resounding no to
okay,
that question. No, no, they haven't.
but they should.
The closest involvement of OEMs that we've had are employees of OEMs that have done lemons sort of in a
Oh,
normal
sure.
way.
Yeah.
But I think, through that experience, who knows whether or not they have whether any of that has translated to their day jobs working for an OEM. I mean, certainly Mazda is one that really pops to mind
Hmm.
because there has
Honda
been,
probably a little bit.
yeah, yeah. There have been Mazda people who are, at a very high engineering level within Mazda. And they also built a very competitive Lemons car. And one could only wonder the direction of the exchange of information there, whether or not any of their Lemons technology made it into the street car.
Well, I think at the minimum, we should request it for the people who design these things and put the pieces in to realize that they eventually have to come back out.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's God, talk about a modern BMW.
Yeah, it's in there
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah. You'll figure it out. Just bring it to the dealer. Yeah, but
Yeah,
what if you're
exactly.
trying to get back out on track and win Class C?
Yeah,
Yeah.
to change the spark plug, we had to pull the engine. Yeah.
Right. Well,
So,
to be honest, I had an oil leak that I still don't know if I fully diagnosed on my 2002. And my mechanic, who is a Lemons racer separately, he said, "Man, I think we have to drop them if we had to pull the cylinder head because I thought it might be the head gasket leaking externally." And he said, "If we have to pull the cylinder head, I think the motor has to come out because the cylinder head won't clear the cowl." This is a result of me having swapped the motor into something that's not supposed to be in there. The
it
normal one,
happens.
you don't have to do that. So,
Well, you know,
so yeah, you learn these things for sure.
it would only be appropriate that some of the lemons has rubbed off on you as well with your car project. So,
Yeah, yeah.
how goes the 2002? Is it still running?
Yeah, I took it out. I hadn't driven it in a few weeks, and there was sort of a local old car combination of Lemons people, combination of people that I've worked with on Lemons and combinate and Lemons racers that are just local to us. One of them invited us up to a little cabin on the Russian River, and it was everybody brought their old car because just to be festive. And
Hmm.
yeah, I drove 2002 up there. It ran great. It was hot. It seemed okay. So yeah, there's my 2002, a couple of 911s, an Alpha Spider, Alpha GTV. It was a good gathering.
Yeah, sounds
How
awesome.
many projects do you have going?
Oh,
Just
just
car
the
projects.
oh yeah, no, that's well.
Well,
I have the 2002 is my main thing. The next thing I'm looking towards is my mom's 1952 Rover P4,
Oh, wow.
which has literally not run in my lifetime. It has stickers. The registration stickers are from before I was born. And it's never been on the road. And I'm kind of, I was just reaching out to a Lemons person who runs a restoration slash fabrication shop. And I was like, hey, is this a project you would be interested in taking on? And so I'm kind of testing the waters on that because I'd love to see that thing on the road.
That would be awesome.
But I have not, Vicky, as far as it being a project, I just look at it. I haven't actually done anything.
and think that it could be a fun project to do, although, time and money and
Well, so the problem is, I mean, it's a 1952 Rover. Where do you get parts for such a thing?
right. I was just
And
thinking that.
yeah, and so I'm at the like, do you just right off the bat bite the bullet and put in? I'm thinking like a Chevy straight six because it
Right.
doesn't need to be fast.
The
Uh,
internet says you should K swap it.
Well, yeah, I could, actually, the Lemons guy said, maybe a modern fuel injected four cylinder. So that would be a possibility. My mom already has a Honda CRV. We could just take the motor out of that and put it in the Rover, see what she
Right.
thinks about that.
Might be cheaper to just do a hat car.
Yeah, right, exactly. So I don't know. It's pretty funny that car. My mom is from Detroit and moved to California in the 70s, saw that car parked on the street and said, I gotta have that. And it was a real dumb decision, which I support. And it ran for a while. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, the time that she actually drove it is like 5 years at the most.
Right.
But it was like a very pivotal time. That's when she met my dad. They met in law school in San Francisco, and she was driving it then. And then it made it to the house that I live in now, which is my parents' old house. And then that was it. That was the end of the line for the Rover. So
Well, the Rovers they were pretty famous for running, just never running well.
yeah, it's an interesting car. It's really pretty well built. It's like, I mean, I think one of the things people would say is like, oh, it was like the poor man's Rolls Royce of the time. But looking at the parts, like it's got these big giant Girling drum brakes on it that are really similar to like a contemporary Jaguar, like early
Mhm.
50s Jaguar. So I think there is some sort of crossover there. The engine was not as exotic as a Jag, but
Just missed it by that much.
yeah. Maybe I should do that. I could get the motor out of like an XJ6, take all the electronics off of it, put SUs on it, and it'll
Mhm.
run perfectly forever. Maybe
Mhm.
that's an idea.
Just replace everything that says Lucas on it.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Yeah, we have
That's
this as you know, we have an air hanger, and on the back side is this guy who has two open air hangers. And they're, a handful of Austin Healey's. He's got some Triumphs in there. He's got some decent stuff, and it's just sitting,
yeah,
He's got a
just
bug eye.
sitting in its
yeah.
part right. And I think he's even got like a Fiero in there. I mean, all these like really interesting cars that haven't seen in decades.
Yeah.
And we're
Yeah.
like trying to help this guy sell these things, but
But he knows
um,
what he's got, so that's the
but he
problem.
knows what he's got and he's not selling them.
Well, see, the funny thing is, if somebody came and said, "Hey, I want to buy your Rover and I want to get it on the road," we would be like, "Great."
Yeah.
But
Right?
weirdly, nobody has done that yet.
Well, I started a conversation with him, and I was like, do you want to sell these or not? And he's like, well, I know this one when it ran across the thing at Meekum or wherever it was, and I'm like, yeah, but the key thing is it ran across the thing. Yours would be
Yeah,
pushed.
Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. No, well, and God, I mean, there's the you always see the ads where it says 90% restored, and then like, we all know that the last 10% takes up actually 90% of the total time that you put into it.
And budget.
Yeah, and the budget. So yeah, I mean, people can be delusional, and then, people like me, who I think, I'd like to think I'm less delusional. I don't have a car that anybody wants, so it
There's
doesn't work out for that reason.
there's somebody out there who wants it.
Yeah, so those Rovers, I forget if it's the UK or Australia, because those are the two places where they were the most popular.
Mhm.
Um, they're called the Auntie Rover, I think, because it's kind of like that's the car your aunt would drive. It's sort of like a sort of an old fuddy-duddy car, which is part
Mhm.
of its charm, I think. Um, so there might be some appeal for them there, but it's one of those situations where like the nicest one in the world costs, I don't know, throw out a number, say 10,000, which is probably high.
Yeah.
So you could either do that or get ours, figure out a way to get it there, then get it running, and then all of a sudden you're way upside down on it. So
Yeah. Yeah, this is not a logic project.
right, exactly. Which is why we're the ones that have to do it, because we're the only ones for whom that car has sentimental value.
Mhm. Indeed. So we talked a little bit about your project cars and how's the list of Lemons cars that haven't been done going?
Yeah, well, Eric is better at keeping track of that. I think it's going really well. I mean, there are cars that are perennially on the list.
Mhm.
The Ford Maverick is the obvious one, the 70s Ford Maverick, not the current truck one. There's one that showed up that was a hat car. It's on a C5 Corvette. Um, so that's kind of the one that's been there since the beginning, since we started making lists. But, more importantly, whether a car's on the list or not, every race, maybe not every race, but probably every other race, every third race, we see a car that has never been Lemons before.
Really?
And
Yeah.
and so in a way, people are bringing stuff quicker than we can add it to the list. So
Mhm.
in that sense, I think it's going really well.
Yeah. I was gonna say the list
Yeah.
keeps it. You keep ticking cars off the list, but the list keeps seemingly getting bigger.
Yeah. Well, we're always like, you learn of a new car that you didn't know existed. That's a
Hmm.
thing. Or, I mean, as new cars get old, I mean, certainly like whatever our list was in 2010, there weren't any 2010 cars on that list.
Right.
But here we are 14 years later, and whatever the worst car of 2010 was is now suddenly on our list. You know, something like a what was that little Suzuki that it was like a little hatchback. It was four-wheel drive from around then, from like
Oh,
late
yeah, yeah.
2000s.
I'm blanking on it. I've got Samurai stuck in my head, and
Yeah,
that's
no,
not
it's
it.
it's like the SR. What is it? Anyway, it's a little goofy little thing. We've never seen
Hmm.
one of those.
Nope.
So that's a car that wouldn't have been on the list because it was too new 10 years ago, and then now
Nope.
all of a sudden, yep, it's on the list.
Yeah, for sure. I think the if we're 20 years from now, let's just use 20 years as the metric for a lemons appropriate car. Um, I'd hate to see a Cybertruck out there. I think it weighs too
Oh,
much, but
Oh no, no,
yeah. Well, I mean,
no.
looking at cars that aren't likely to age well for one reason or another, I
mm,
mean, you got to put the Cybertruck on that list. I mean, there's no way that that's going to be a
It'll
desirable
be
car.
there with the PT Cruiser.
Yeah, exactly.
Same
One
vibe.
car, yeah. I mean, the problem with the Cybertruck is it probably is way beyond our weight limit. You would
yeah,
have to like do a significant lightning program. Same goes for the Jeep Grand Wagoneer. That's a car that when it came out, we were like, oh man, that thing's $100,000. There, 2 years from now, it's going to be $8,500,
yep.
Oh my gosh.
from the
And
sketchy dealer. So
have
there
you
are cars like
seen
that.
have you seen the videos of just how shoddy the Cybertruck is?
Oh man, yeah.
Like crap is falling off off.
Yeah, it really, Tesla, boy, I mean, obviously people have a lot of opinions about Tesla for various reasons. The
Right.
amazing thing to me is that like, I'm in the Bay Area. I know plenty of people that have Teslas, Jay being one of them. And like drivetrain wise, they're great. Like, I mean, Jay's Tesla, I don't know what year that thing is. I mean, it's at least 10 years old and like
Right.
drivetrain, it's been great. And then you're totally right about the fit and finish and like, like I have a friend with a
Paint.
Model 3 and it's just like this thing's kind of a piece of shit. But it's, like
Got bells
they
and whistles.
they function. Yeah, they work as a thing. And the thing that I don't know, I mean, not to go off on a Tesla tangent, but
Hey, we get
that
clicks this way, man.
yeah, the thing that people zeroed in on are things like the panel gaps and like, oh, whatever, this interior door panel fell off. And it's like, don't act like that hasn't been happening to BMW for the last 30 years. Like,
Yeah.
since when was that the criteria for, or general, it's like, oh, all of a sudden we care about the interior. Like, we're just going to let General Motors off the hook for crappy interiors for the last however many decades. So
Or
I don't know. Not that I'm a Tesla fanboy. I just feel like, well, we have to be fair about how we evaluate them compared to other crappy cars that also exist.
I mean, you've got all the European cars who have the biodegradable slash
Oh,
incredibly edible
yeah,
wiring.
yeah, yeah. They were doing that in the 80s. I had no
Yeah.
idea. Like 80s and 90s. Mercedes was at the cutting edge of the biodegradable wiring, which, for the record, is a good idea. Had this unexpected effect of having rats eat it 30 years down the road. But,
Yep.
you
And
know,
then we have the infamous I believe the technical term is sticky buttons.
oh yeah. That goes beyond just cars. Like I
Does.
have some old like like DJ sound equipment from 25 years ago that had the same problem. It was like just a general plastics problem from
Mm-hmm.
that era.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it is a real bummer when it's your Ferrari that does that, I suppose.
I wouldn't know.
You don't have a 355, do you, with the sticky
No, no.
dashboard?
I'm still putting a cage in it. It
Ah,
doesn't
yes.
count yet. So
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
the
yeah.
other
We're still
thing
waiting
that
for that. We're still waiting for our first Lemons Ferrari.
well, you
So
had the Fartari from Road Atlanta that 1 year or 2 years, I
that's
think.
yeah. Well, we've had Ferrari replicas. We want a
Yeah.
real, we want actually the ideal Lemons Ferrari would be a 308, a real 308 chassis with a Fiero body on it. That'd be
Uh,
the ultimate Lemons Ferrari.
that would be quite fun. Or an MR2 body on it would be fine
Right,
too.
exactly. Yeah, the
Yeah,
reverse fake Ferrari.
that's right. That would be fine.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I was thinking about with the Cybertruck is John Pagel probably wouldn't let it in just because the body itself could kill people.
Yeah. Well, you could fatally cut yourself on the sharp edges just from walking by it.
Hmm.
So.
Yeah, you might have to put an exo cage on the panel
Right.
caps.
Yeah, exactly.
That's okay though. So you've got recently you've seemed to have expanded the judging pool almost pretty significantly. And how's that going for you guys?
Yeah, again, probably a better question for Eric.
He's not here though, so we're bothering you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, the motivation behind doing that was just to reduce burnout so Eric didn't have to go to every single race.
Hmm.
And also just to have redundancy, like, like there was one race a couple years ago where Eric had an illness and just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
And we realized that we didn't have much of a safety net for that. So it was a combination of just, short-term practical reducing the load on our existing judges, but then also creating sort of a bench of judges that we could go to just in case.
Yeah.
So,
Plus, you have a ton
but
of races now as opposed to when you first started. It was a
yeah,
few.
right,
So,
right. And then as far as how it's going, we evaluate that after each race, and we're definitely putting more effort into training before the race. I say the word training like there's a manual. But Eric is really good at, he's identified where we've done things well in the past and where we've done things not as well in the past. And he's been good at relaying that to new people.
mhm.
So yeah.
It seems like it's going over well because
Yeah.
the newer judges, while they don't have the experience or maybe they haven't gone through it everywhere, but they're having a really good time and it's
Yeah.
apparent to all the people
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we realized, I mean, the judges is like one of, if not the most important touch points between the racers and the series. And so we realized we couldn't just wing it anymore. And we had to put some thought into it. So
yeah, 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 that makes sense. I mean, it's uh it takes a little bit of delicacy, which is weird in a lemons context to say that word, but a little bit of delicacy with the interactions that aren't going quite as lemony as they should.
yeah, yeah. It's a hard, I'm not good at it. So I respect how hard it is. And it varies from place to place. You know, you guys know the Northeast is probably the most sort of combative, potentially, not everybody, of course, but like we have a higher incidence rate of sort of antagonistic interactions in the penalty box, and
Hmm.
Yeah,
it
that's
takes a
that's
different.
that's the northeast.
You're right,
No,
right.
no,
The New
The more
Hampshire,
north
yeah,
you
yeah,
get,
yeah.
the more aggro they get.
Right, 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 right.
so I intervened on your behalf. I think it was last year or the year before at New Jersey because we had a really good Saturday,
Yeah.
and the year prior we had a really good Saturday, and the judges said something about it, and then
Ah,
Sunday was just
yeah,
a debacle. So I'm like, do
yeah.
not compliment the driving. Do
Yeah,
not. Just,
yeah,
just
yeah,
keep
yeah,
walking. Just keep
yeah,
saying we suck,
yeah,
and it'll
yeah,
be fine. So
yeah,
That's
yeah.
right.
Well, sometimes that happens without us even doing anything. I remember one time in Texas, there was a day where the Saturday, the weather was really bad. It was just wet and rainy and everything. And then Sunday, it was good. And the quality of driving on Saturday was way better. And
yeah,
I think because, like, oh, people were maybe like more careful because it was raining. And then on Sunday,
they
they were
drove
like,
in
we got
control.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, let me show what I held
Yeah.
back
Yeah. Yeah.
yesterday.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me show you guys what this 260Z will do. Yeah.
So so part of our responsibility as journalists, okay, and podcasters, again, almost hilarious to say, we have this idea, and what it is the grand slam of budget endurance racing. So
Uh-huh.
so we're thinking that there needs to be a competition where you get to choose one race from each of four budget endurance series, and then whoever comes up with this stupid idea and has points and decides to buy a little piece of plastic hardware, whatever. So, what would the Lemons Grand Slam event be?
Oh, that's a good question. I honestly, like, I have my own personal favorites, but one thing that I've really grown to appreciate is that each of the Lemons races, because of the people that race in them, have their
Hmm.
own flavor, and
For
they're
sure.
all good in one way or the other.
Hmm.
So, the obvious one would be the 24-hour at
High Plains.
High Plains,
Yeah.
because that track's in the middle of nowhere. It's a great track to drive. It's a 24-hour race. It's just kind of a whole experience that I think echoes a lot of the things that we talk about being appealing for Lemons. But that being said, it's like any of them. Obviously the ones you guys have done. I mean, Thompson is a wild one.
Hmm.
The venue and the location and the people that show up.
And the
So
ice cream store.
yeah, ice cream, golf, driving range,
Yep.
they got the whole thing. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think it's whatever fits into the schedule would be good. There aren't any that I would say, yeah, don't ever do that one.
Don't do that one. Well,
Yeah.
it won't be on the schedule next season, so that's
Right,
for
right,
sure.
exactly. Yeah, if it's something that went really badly, we'll just quietly stop going.
Yeah. We're,
So,
we're dumb, but we're not that dumb.
yeah, exactly.
So what's your schedule looking like for the rest of the year? Are you going to be able to make any events? Are you
Yeah, so well, I'm going to Pacific tomorrow. Normally I go to Buttonwillow, normally I go to MSR, and I'm actually going to neither this year. Here, I've got the schedule right here. Actually, yeah, so I've got Pacific and then I've got Sonoma. That's my last two from here on forward for the year. So
awesome?
yeah.
It seems like it's back when we first started, it seemed like it was pretty hard on a lot of the Lemon staff because they were going to every single event.
Yeah.
It seems
Yeah.
like it's a little bit more palatable and
Yeah,
tolerable.
yeah. I mean, we've been lucky that we've been able to sort of dial that back. I mean, that's another thing that we sort of learn on the fly. Like, hey, would this be a viable thing if we went to every one and turned out, nope, we're gonna
For
die
a
if
short
we did.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And we have different, like, Kim puts herself on the line for more races than the rest of them because I think she enjoys being there more than the rest of us do.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a little bit of variation there.
Well,
But
well,
but
s-
yeah.
speaking of Kim and speaking of the Lemon staff, I think one thing that didn't get enough thanks from everybody in the Lemons and racing community as a whole was what you guys did to get through racing during the plague.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I appreciate you saying that, but the amount of people that had given us money for events that then had to be canceled that carried their money over to whenever we got going again. And the people that showed up at those first few races when we were able to go back racing, that's what did it.
Yeah.
Like,
Well,
we
even
had,
your staff that had to come out and self quarantine for a week
yeah.
to go to, I think it was Thompson was one of them.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Kim was in an Airbnb for a week before one of those races. So,
Hmm.
so yeah, no, it was, I don't know. It was certainly a group effort. And we owe a lot to the participants too. So,
Well, uh, we register once you release the schedule, we register and usually pay. And once we know
yeah,
how many cars,
yeah,
and you guys said,
yeah,
hey, if you want to take your money back, we're like, no, we want you to keep being a business, and we
yeah, yeah,
understand. So it necessary. So
yeah, yeah. Well, that played a big role in it for sure.
well,
So, and then we gave you a sticker.
we did, and we have the sticker. I'm like,
Yeah.
but we have lots of cars, and we register for lots of races, and you gave me
Yeah.
one sticker.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Yeah. Oh man, that whole thing, just figuring out how to, figure out who did it and then to make the little packets
oh,
like
it
we
was
were doing
fun.
all that. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. Yeah, we did it on the fly. The thing that was a bummer was there's actually more work than actually just doing our normal jobs.
Hmm.
So it was kind of a insult to injury in
Yeah.
that case. But yeah.
And
Yeah.
everybody got real comfortable with video at that point.
Yes, yeah. Well, now, yeah, I mean, we don't have, we're all working remotely now. And I think that was going to happen sort of regardless of COVID, but COVID definitely sped things along. Yeah, once we started doing our videos over Zoom, that just became a thing. So, yeah.
I will say the in-person Lemons recap videos with you and Jay on the sofa
Yeah.
are still
Some of our favorite.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've talked about, trying to maybe like, well, we should do a few of those a year because it's not like we're that far from each other, but there's a bridge and there's traffic and it just
Oh,
becomes
and it's California, so we have to complain about traffic. So
yeah, yeah, that's right.
so how many Lemons races are we getting to?
So I'm looking at the schedule right now. We have 23. It's been kind of in that zone for the past several years. And I think that's a good spot for us now. The main focus is like for the ones that still have room, which is really, I mean, the Northeast is one of the places where that's not so much the case. But places like Colorado, believe it or not, California, we have a little bit of capacity now. I think just because there's more sort of activities that you can do here, so people are getting spread a little bit more thin. So the main focus now is to just increase the participation in the events where we have room of our existing schedule of the 24, 25-ish race schedule. But then, expanding beyond that, if it makes sense, is always a possibility.
Yeah, I think I did a calculation as best I could, trying to look up history, and I think you guys are getting close to a landmark number of races. I'm trying to see if I can find my sheet,
Oh
but
yeah, that's a good God, because we did do, is it 300?
I
Because I
think
feel like we already crossed 250 at some point,
I
or
think you
maybe
did. I think it was. I think
yeah,
you're. I did the calculation trying to figure out where 500 was, but since we didn't start in the
yeah,
beginning, it's hard. It's hard
yeah,
to recollect all the way back.
right.
But obviously, no plans to celebrate since none of us know what the answer is.
Yeah, right. Well, we did do, God, what did we do? I guess we did a 10-year commemorative event that happened to land around Ginger Man of that year,
Mhm.
2016.
20 should be
And
coming, right?
yeah, so 20 would be 2026 would be the 20 year. Um, and then as far as the individual races themselves, I forget we did something for one of those, whether it was the 100th or whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, I think especially with you guys popping out like, roughly 25 a year, it's
Yeah.
non-trivial math, but it's not that hard. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
so
Well, the hard part is finding out how many we've done now, which I certainly don't know.
yeah. Well, like I said, I've got a
Eric might
spreadsheet,
know
but I can't find it. It's in there.
that. Yeah,
So
Eric's kind of better with the numbers than I am.
yeah,
He might know that.
he's another spreadsheet guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there's got to be a reason why nobody likes my idea. So I'm going to tell you my idea,
Okay.
and
I'm
you
probably
tell
Oh,
gonna
good
hate
idea.
and you tell me your idea. So
it.
Lemons isn't aimed at being the fastest race, or really, that's not the point. Like the thing I try to explain to people is if you're trying to change lemons, you're going to be very unhappy. If you just take it in lemons and just run with it, you'll fit right in and everything will be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the thought or what's the flaw in my logic that says after you win A, either once
So
or
many
twice,
times, not just
Yeah.
once,
well, it could be
many
once.
times.
It depends. Depends on, it's really up to those guys. But I'm saying once you win A like twice, it's not that you can't keep racing. It's just you're in the exhibition class.
Right, 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 right. Yeah, we played around with, I mean, not exactly for that reason, but we played around with an X class at one point. And then it just, we felt like it was just a little bit too much of a micromanaging of what people were doing. I mean, what I'd like to think is that at that level, if you're going for the overall win, that's just kind of the way you're wired. And even within the constraints of Class A, the way we have it now, um, I'd like to think that you're not really pissing anyone else off by being off in your little world racing against the 4 cars that could win
Yeah.
overall. And then meanwhile, everybody else is going for, their own personal goals. And so, I think that in that example and in other places within Lemons, we like to think that wildly different philosophies can still exist together on the same track. There are limits, of course. Like,
Yeah.
there are teams that we talk, this being the week after Road America, we had a Zoom meeting about a particular team at Road America. So there are teams that kind of push those limits sometimes. But for the most part, the fact that team X is really fast does not affect the enjoyment of team Y. And then, once it's at that point, we just sort of feel like, well, why mess with it if everybody's happy?
Yeah, I can see that.
See, my whole philosophy on Lemons is that it's the gateway for wheel to wheel. Like, not you're out of HPDE, you're dealing with entry level. And I think that if you start adding an X class, and I'm not beating you up on any way,
It's my
it
idea, so
brings
she doesn't like it. It's fine.
no, it's not that. It's not that. Is that
Nick.
you're adding more speed and a little bit more danger for those new beginners that are coming in.
Yeah.
And for the amount of people that are there. So it is kind of right. And that was a conversation that we had. They're like, well, it's when you go in there, it's just so random about how they're going to clash your car and then how many points you get. I'm like, well, that you're missing the spirit of Lemons.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there trying to figure out how your placement is going to be so you can take a checker flag, you're missing the whole point of Lemons. You need not to be in Lemons.
Yeah, well, and I think you're totally right. If people who say that, I think, want to have the effect of getting across the idea of you're missing out because I'm not racing because of something that you're doing. And I think what they fail to realize is like, well, in most cases, the system is actually working exactly like we've designed. It's kept you from racing with us. And so that's certainly part of it. And then also, I mean, that is, without really saying it, that is the most common thing that people sometimes don't understand about Lemons, that we're not about the outright win. You can, we don't discourage you from being competitive, but that's not the primary reason why you're doing it. There are a lot of other series where that is the primary reason. And so, because that's the most common thing and because there's an obvious other place for people to do that, we also feel like that system is working as intended. That some people have left and gone and done other things, and if they're happier there, then I think it works out for everybody.
Right. And those instances where they're going to rate the car, but you're also rating some of these very random cars.
And
trying to fit them all into a category and then trying to bump them up with like really great racers and like decent cars. And I think that it is impossible for Lemons, the way that the cars are categorized, to be accurate. There is no way. You're kind of taking face value, and not everybody's on the same level field.
Well, the funny thing is, you're totally right, and that's one of the things.
BS. Let's be honest, it is BS.
Yeah, and we say that, obviously. That's part of our thing.
That's why we have
we don't hide it. We say we make it up on site, and like either people can handle it or they can't. But as far as the accuracy, I actually think that accidentally we have discovered that doing it our way in terms of accuracy isn't really that different from trying to be accurate from a technical standpoint. I mean, look at Formula One. Like, right at this moment, Mercedes is complaining about Red Bull, is complaining about McLaren because of ways that they feel like the rules have been exploited, between. So it's like, well, and they have a very specific, I mean, their technical rules are the pinnacle in all of motorsports, and there's still conflict about it. So I think one thing we've realized is like, well, if Formula One can't write a rule book that makes everybody happy, we certainly aren't going to. And so therefore, we're just going to make it up.
Right.
So that's how we wound up. I mean, like I say, the motivation to do that was to make sure people were kind of in the right headspace for doing lemons. But then accidentally, we have discovered that, oh, that actually didn't really affect accuracy and this idea of a level playing field as much as we thought it would, if at all. So I don't know.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, usually it works out, with a rare exception, much more rare than people would think with the way that we do it. Cars misclassified aren't that common.
Yeah. Well, and that's credit to the judges. Eric, he has been, if it's a race that even if it's a race he is going to be at, he creates a little spreadsheet, of course, with team history, what class cars have been in the past, how they did, cars to look out for, and he sends it out to the judges. So, I mean, that's, I guess, a form of being organized about it, but
it's not strict.
At the end of the day, there's still a lot of wiggle room. So
I mean, we took it once we knew that sheet existed. It was game on, challenge time. How do we
oh,
evade?
Wait a minute! I just found out that sheet existed just like now.
Oh,
Eric's secret sheet.
We have known about said sheet, and we have argued against said sheet. So we started bringing our own sheet, and just
Our sheet is shit.
Whatever. It just proves they're like, but this is obviously a pick a class A or B car, and I'm like, yeah, but we're not. There's a balancing thing.
The fun thing about the whole lemons things is that there's something for everybody, and it's not just about going out and winning a race. You can pick something that you want to win at, and you could throw your whole thing in on it, and it might not be winning a race.
Right.
It's a great way of starting into your whole journey of being a racer.
And I think launch. Well, and absolutely, like some people like building the car, they don't like driving. Some people only like driving. Some people like the costumes, and not only can that exist simultaneously within a lemons race, that can exist simultaneously within a team.
Right.
Not the costume guy and the whatever. It's just the main thing is maintaining the right attitude through all of that. So
well, speaking of Halloween meets gasoline.
Yes.
Not only is it an exquisite chance for each team to donate $1,000 to Lemons of Love or whatever the charity of the race is, but I think it has, at least in my mind, it has exceeded the expectations going in when we first started it with the quality and depth of theming.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's why we did it, obviously. Like, we felt like we needed to give it a little bit of a kick to get it going again, and I think it's totally achieved that. So we're glad that people took it and ran with it.
It's hard.
Yeah. Well, and we've said in the videos, as I'm sure you guys know, one thing that we look at pretty heavily is, all right, we sit down on Sundays, like, who's still doing the same thing they were doing on Friday? Like, that's a big factor that I think, like I said, it's not a secret that we look at that. But that really does, like, of the 20 teams that were great on Friday, there might be 2 that are still great on Sunday because it's hard. And so, that's how we look at it.
Well, from a personal perspective, I would be remiss in not thanking you and the team for finally giving Space Pants the award so they would go away.
Yeah. What was the deal with Space Pants?
It was the Peter Dinklage Saturday Night Live skit, and they had a song, and thankfully they won, so they stopped.
Yeah, right. That is right.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
We're just having fun.
It's been when it came to that part of Lemons in the theming, it has become quite the challenge of trying to find something that has not really been done already.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point, it says, well, yes, it has been done, but has it been done well?
Well, and that's,
Right.
and we're definitely in tune to that. Like there's like, I mean, this is maybe a little bit of a dated list at this point, but like for a long time it was like, okay, don't do A-Team, don't do Smokey and the Bandit. We've seen it 1,000 times. But then, like, sure enough, there'll be a team that comes around that does it better than everybody else. Which, so if there are things that are like, oh yeah, we've seen that before, maybe look at how well it was done, and then decide you can come back to it.
When we
Yeah.
decided to do Top Gun and we went over to the Top Gun,
Yeah.
that was one of the discussions we had. And then,
Yeah.
during the debate on whether we should even try this, I was like, the only thing that I think is on the perma ban list is Smokey and the Bandit. I think everything else.
Yeah. Well, part of the problem is finally it was Knox Vegas Lowballers. This was a long time ago at Barber that
Yep.
finally just did it so well that we were like, nobody's ever going to do this again. So
thankfully, yeah.
I mean, once you make a Geo Metro into the Snowman's big rig, then it's all over for everybody else.
Exactly. I mean, that was the same thing we had because it was around the time when the Barbie movie was out. And, I've watched all the videos. That was kind of how we studied to start how do you study to start racing lemons? But whatever, horrible sentence as that is.
Right.
I watched that video and I'm like, we can't do that. And Vicki and Jen were like, no, we need to do it. And I showed them the video and they're like, no, we're done. We're not doing that.
It's still out there. It's,
That's a tough bar though. That one's going to.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah, that was a good one. Well, there's Oppenheimer. That was the same summer. You could do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We were thinking about blending them and making them into one, but we went Top Gun anyway. So
yeah, good old Barbenheimer. Yeah.
So is there a list anywhere in either documented or top of your head of themes that you guys want that haven't been done?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I mean, the honest answer is no, because we like being surprised. No, honestly, like
we're like at the end of Netflix.
Yeah, like I mean, there are literally themes that have to be explained to us. Like this is based on this weird novel that nobody ever read, but then once they explain it, and then it starts to make sense, we're like, oh, okay, I get it. I don't know. I'm a big fan of Star Trek: The Next Generation. We've seen Star Trek: The Original Series, but I feel like there are, tangible differences between each of the Star Trek spinoffs. So if you were to pick a Star Trek one that was not that, I'd be into it.
Okay. All right. Well, we've got a long list.
Yeah.
And a couple of them, I'm just telling you, forewarning. If you get an email from me one day and it says, Nick, are you coming to this race?
You might be Jean-Luc Picard.
You might want to come to the race if you have the opportunity.
All right.
It's not a threat, it's an invitation.
All right. I look forward to it.
All right, very well. Miss Vicki, did we get everything?
I think we did.
I think we did. All right. Well, Nick, until we bother you again about 10 times and you finally weaken enough to come back on, until that day, thank you for coming on, sir.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
It's always fun seeing you. So hopefully you'll be able to travel a bit more, and we'll see you in person at one of the races, or maybe we'll travel West Coast and find you somehow.
There you go. Yeah.
That's right.
Bring the Starship Enterprise to Sonoma. I'll be there.
Exactly. We're always thinking about how to get West Coast, and we're always thinking like bringing the car. Okay, that's a pain, but bringing all the other stuff like the tools, the spare parts,
it's a lot.
It's just like we need to set up some. This is what we need. We need to set up a team trade seats.
Yeah, well, and it's happened. There are a few teams where the East Coast team comes to drive the West Coast car and vice versa over the course of the year. So we're gonna figure it out.
We eventually will invade the West Coast because our daughter's graduating high school, so we should have some more mobility.
Excellent. Send her to college out here, and then you'll.
She's got that plan. She's like, well, why can't I go visit? And she's got San Diego
Uh-huh.
State, I think it is. Then she's got
Yeah.
Washington State, and she's got
Yeah.
University of Colorado. And she's like, well, why don't we just go? And I'm like,
Yeah.
no, no,
Those are all great places.
they're great places. They're wonderful places to be, but he doesn't quite have the perspective on how far apart they are.
Yeah.
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 Ah.
Yeah.
There is that. I get that. I didn't go to college very far away, so I
Yeah.
understand that too.
Well, I mean, it's not like you just go to San Diego and then, just hop in the car 20 minutes later, you're at University of Washington.
Oh, she was talking about trying to do those three in one trip. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a little trickier.
Yeah, that's like 3-4 days of driving, just
Yeah,
driving.
yeah.
So
No, that's like a 6 week tour of the West.
exactly, which I'm sure she would be all into,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
no.
yeah.
Anyway, thank you, Nick.
All right, thank you.